Welcome to the TH Fantasy Football Show, hosted by Hestel and Ed.
All too often, the real NFL draft doesn't always prove kind to fantasy football enthusiasts, but Brock Bowers landing in Vegas last year certainly ticked a box, and a star running back ending up with the Raiders has also given us some excitement as we head into this draft season. Ed and I are now going to have a look through Las Vegas Raiders from a point of view of fantasy relevance for your redraft league, starting with the first new man on the strip, Mr. Gino Smith.
Indeed, yeah. Gino reuniting with Pete Carroll in Vegas as he looks to stop Vegas from continuing to become irrelevant when it comes to real-life fantasy football. I mean, Smith struggled the last couple of years in Seattle after his top 5 2022 season. I mean, he didn't get much help from a poor O-line and poor coaching. But last season, he did manage a career high of 4,320 yards, which was a positive. He's an accurate passer most of the time. 78.7% on-target passes, put him second in the league last year. But there were fewer deep throws, and he did end up with 15 interceptions, which was his worst year for receptions since his rookie year. I mean, the problem with Gino this year is that it's going to be a run-first offense under a new offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, and the man we're about to talk about will feature very heavily in that. I think QB 26 does undersell him, which is where he's currently being drafted, and he's definitely going to be relevant in 2 QB leagues. But will he get as high as last year, QB 13? I don't think so, but a possible top 20, and as you suggest, a streaming option somewhere down the line if you're after a quarterback. But yeah, will he ever get back to top 5? No.
I think when we look at the fact that Carroll went after him, that shows you the fit that Pete Carroll thinks. Yes, there is loyalty within sport, but ultimately Carroll wants to win and show that he's still got it with the new team as well. So he's got to see that Gino is the answer to that question. I think it's an upgrade massively for the Raiders in general. I think looked at last year's Minshew-O'Connell combination. This is an upgrade for all receivers in that situation as well. But yeah, you're not drafting Gino Smith as your QB1. If you are drafting him at all, it's because you've waited a little bit later for your quarterback and you want a backup on there as well. I think by the time we get to the bye weeks, he'll probably be back on waivers, and in friendly matchups, you could probably find worse QBs. But I agree. I think QB 26 is massively underselling his value, and I do think he will comfortably outperform that. I'd say probably somewhere maybe 18 to 20-ish when all is done in the season, assuming, once again, we've got to factor in injuries that come away as well. But that's just where I kind of seem to be more likely come the end of the season.
Yeah, he'll do you a job, as I say, especially in 2 quarterback leagues. Gino is a very solid option.
A player that I don't think there's been a great deal of talk about through the offseason, especially through the draft. Up next, have you got anything to say about the new running back of town, Mr. Ashton Jeanty?
1 or 2 things. I mean, the upside of being absolutely rubbish in the NFL for season after season is that you can draft back-to-back absolute beasts, especially when it comes to fantasy. More on the 2024 beast shortly. But 2025's beast is probably the best running prospect in a number of years. Of course, his production isn't guaranteed in the NFL, but it's as close to being guaranteed as you can get. He's just got everything you want. Densely built, breaks tackles with ease, as well as being the fastest running back of his class. He wasn't as heavily involved in the receiving game for Boise State last season, rather being a pure rushing workhorse. He got through a few yards last year, but undoubtedly he's got the talent to play either role, and he'll get some receiving work as well. And he's not going to have much competition, to be honest. But let's not forget he's entering a backfield that was arguably the worst in the league last season. However, coaching changes should make a difference, and you just got to expect Jeanty to justify the hype. He's going off the board about RB5, and that's probably where he'll finish. But there is a route to him having an absolute monster of a season and being top 2, top 3 running back.
The draft capital's there. The need to be used is there. The skill set is there. You look at his receiving work, I think is only comparable in numbers, college numbers, to CMC and Jahmyr Gibbs. And we've seen what that means for fantasy in the past as well. And he's just not got anything behind him that makes me massively concerned about him finding a workload. Then once again, add into that all of the physical traits well. And we also know he can probably handle that. To watch, if anyone isn't kind of involved in fantasy and doesn't get involved in watching much of the rookie stuff through the off season, as many people watching now probably don't, just go and treat yourself to watching a few of Jeanty's highlight packages. I think my comp for him early season was he was like a bumper car or Dodgem, depending on where you are and what you call them, but just seems to hit contact back and then he's up to full speed again almost immediately. There's the Newton's laws of motion just don't seem to apply to him because the equal opposite reaction just doesn't exist. He will plow into a player and then he is carrying on again. He can, the pivot and to change direction is ridiculous as well. I'm so excited. Every so often there's players that come along that I think we probably tend to have 2 or 3 a year that we're quite looking forward to seeing what they do outside of our own teams, obviously where that bias comes in. And I cannot wait to watch Ashton Jeanty this year. I really, really can't. From a fantasy point of view, I've got him as RB6 just because historically we see it taking a few games for the production to come in quite frequently for running backs. So I don't think it'll be a slow start. I think it'll be a perfectly normal rookie start. I think the numbers we'll be seeing towards the end of the season, though, he will be week in, week out, an absolute top performer for fantasy. I think that will average out as RB6. Certainly, if you want to take him a bit higher, 3, 4, 5, do so, because if he is firing all cylinders by the time you get to your fantasy playoffs, you're probably going to be extremely happy you've got him plugged in.
Yeah, I agree. I'm genuinely excited to watch him. And the only health warning I'll repeat is that let's not forget that Vegas have been pretty rubbish. So that is something to consider. But I do think they'll be better this season.
Let's say that what I said about the kind of quality behind him, I do wonder if one of these players will fit into the fantasy gremlin category and kind of stealing a little bit of goal line work. You wouldn't expect so, but there's the potential, at least for one of those, isn't there?
Yeah, Raheem Mostert. I mean, at 33, I suppose you have to ask the question, will he even make the roster? I'm sure he will, and I'm sure he'll find a way to have one fantasy relevant week just so you can moan about him a little bit. So he'll definitely get that. Zamir White, Tom's hot take from 2024, blew his chance. RB1 numbers in spectacular fashion as he ended up as RB89, admittedly with an injury later in the season, but he'd already been dropped before then. He'll look to be the backup to Jeanty, but he's not going to get the workload, I would have thought.
No, I wouldn't be considering drafting either of these two at all. Heaven forbid an injury to Jeanty. Yes, there might be some fancy relevance, but at best, I think we might think about taking a gamble on Raheem Mostert as a DFS cheap pick if the matchup indicated he could get a little bit of work. Before we move on to wide receiver, please do take a moment to subscribe, give us a like and a share as well. And then also, why not jump into the channel and have a look at one of our other 31 deep dive shows as we profile all 32 through the off season to prepare us and yourselves for your fantasy drafts. Wide receiver next head, is it clear-cut, definite fantasy production, or is it a little bit murky?
Well, I think when we look at the wide receiver one, who admittedly isn't their top receiver, Jacoby Myers, I've got to ask the question, are fantasy managers sleeping on him again? His ADP, I can't believe, to be honest, is wide receiver 39, which is very, very low. Now, last year, let's just lay out the case for him. He missed 2 games. He still reached 1,000 yards for the first time in his career, despite playing with bad quarterbacks in one of the league's worst offenses. I suppose you might assume that with improvement at the quarterback position, he'll continue to do even better. But I've said this before, I'll say it again about Vegas. They will be a run-first offense. And he definitely isn't the number one receiver in Vegas. Yet he's clearly still the wide receiver one, and he'll get targets. So wide receiver 39, that's massively underselling him, isn't he? I mean, I can see him breaking the top 25 again fairly comfortably. So if you can get him in early round 8, which is where he's going in drafts, I think he's a very safe pick after a very solid 2024.
Yeah, I've got him as a weekly flex play because it seems that you put him in and he just goes out and he gets you a little chunk of points every single week. We said last year we thought wide receiver 55 was nonsense because who else was the ball going to be passed to? We knew Brock Bowers would get some types. We didn't quite realize he was going to get the number he got. But with the volume that Brock Bowers got, as you said, to still end up wide receiver 19, massively outperforming anything people expected of him. I agree. For me, he is probably going to fit somewhere between that wide receiver 24 to 30. So top end wide receiver 3 sort of band. I'd happily take him at cost and probably take him a little bit early if I'm in a draft with you, knowing that you might get him before me.
Oh, no, damn it.
They have added a rookie as well, so there is a bigger question mark than last year. What are you thinking about Jack Besh?
Yeah, Jack Besh, I mean, to be honest, it says a lot about the wide receiving options in Vegas, or lack of them, that Jack Besh, as the 58th overall pick, is likely to slot straight in behind Myers as a clear wide receiver too. Besh, he was a late bloomer in college, but he had a bit of a monster 2024, which included a Senior Bowl where he was one of the stars of the show. He had a disappointing combine where he skipped the 40-yard dash, and that harmed his draft capital a bit. But he's got a clear chance here to establish himself in Vegas, and definitely worth a bench stash late in drafts, as he could get the workload. Or if you don't do that, he'll be one to look out for, I think, quite early on the waiver wire if he settles into his role in Vegas.
Yeah, there's certainly a route where he could have some form of production. I'm not sure I'd be targeting in draft. It would be a last couple of rounds if I thought, yeah, go on then, let's stick another wide receiver on the bench. And once again, when you're looking at players around there, I think I always quite like to take the gamble on the rookie wide receiver who could have a ceiling over the known entities that we've kind of seen year in, year out, will kind of maybe do you a steady floor of about 7 points if you're sticking him on your bench. So, yeah, I agree with that. I think Besh is an interesting target. Anybody else for us to consider at wide receiver before we move on?
I think Trey Tucker is someone worth mentioning. He did at least play all the games last year, started 14 of them. He might be one to watch for on the waiver wire because he could emerge as a wide receiver 3. But once again, this is a rush first offense. So wide receiver 3 in Las Vegas won't get much work, especially when you consider our next player.
And exactly that. Without further ado, let's get into the one of the 2 plays you really, really want from the Raiders offense. Mr. Brock Bowers, he had an all right year last year, didn't he?
Indeed. We finish off with the other beast that I mentioned earlier. And let's be frank, he was the Raiders offense last year. I mean, he is now the consensus tight end 1 across the board in fantasy. I don't think I've seen any rankings where he isn't tight end 1. Some stunning rookie numbers, 112 receptions, which was a rookie record. That's not just for tight ends, for all positions. And 1,194 yards, receiving yards, a rookie tight end record, which I think he stole from Sam Laporta in 2023. So is the only way down following these ridiculous numbers? I mean, possibly, as the offense will be rush first. But surely he's going to be improved as a player. There's better O-line, and he'll benefit from an upgrade at quarterback in Gino Smith. He's going to be a huge red zone target again, and therefore a huge touchdown target, racking up those points for touchdowns. So, yeah, I expect him to be tight end 1. I expect him to put up big numbers. A little health warning. The previous 6 tight ends who have got more than 800 or more yards as rookies all saw their yardages total decline by at least 150 yards the following season. So will Bowers suffer from that sophomore slump? I don't think he will, but don't break the bank for him. Where he's going early round 2 is probably about right. But don't do anything silly like take him with the first overall pick or anything like that.
I think with Brock Bowers, the thing counting in his favour is he's still clearly the number 1 receiver on the team. He's played alongside Tucker and Myers last year and comfortably outworked him when it came to targets. I don't think Jack Besham will come in and take anything over there. The one question mark is the amount of receptions that Jeanty may take. But if we have a quick look last year, Mattison saw 48 targets. They're gone. They pretty much shift all of those over to Jeanty. And then I think Jeanty's more likely to eat into Trey Tucker's workload, maybe a bit of, it's not for the same position, but when it's looking at some of those targets where they may kind of go. Yeah, I think there's plenty of targets to go around, and Brock Bowers' volume is what puts him up there. And I'm not massively worried he's going to lose a huge amount of that volume this year, despite the addition of Jeanty.
No, I don't. He's going to have a great season. I don't think he'll get quite the same numbers, but he'll probably still be tight end one overall.
Well, just to make sure we can try to keep this show close in length to our others, because we didn't quite so much talk about the Raiders. What is your outlook for the Raiders this season then, as we go into 2025? Can they start to turn things around, or are they very much still putting the pieces together?
Yeah, I think the problem with the Raiders from kind of a real life perspective and a fantasy perspective, they're in a tough division. So they've got 6, all of a sudden it's become a tough division in that they've got 6 tough divisional games. I think that's hard, makes it hard for them to get to the playoffs. So they might improve to maybe like 6 or 7 wins. But yeah, I think it's going to be a case of building for Vegas. They're getting the players in place. They've got the coaching set up in place, it seems now. So hopefully it'll be a better season for Raiders fans.
Well, that brings us to the end of the Raiders. We continue our journey through the AFC. We'll be back for our next show on the Broncos. But for now, that's all from me. It's all from Ed. So as always, Malcolm, take us home.
You have been listening to Pestle and Ed of TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Instagram and Twitter.